Let's get talking taboo.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Schultz.
I'm Meredith Sloan.
And I'm Tej Joshi.
And today we have two very different people in the studio. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Emilie. I'm 18 and I go to North Broward Prep in Coconut Creek, Florida.
And my name's Donald Jones. I'm professor of law at University of Miami, and I'm the author of Dangerous Spaces Beyond the Racial Profile. I also teach a course called The Wire, which deals with the issue of gun violence in the inner city. So somehow I feel connected to this.
So Professor Jones and Emilie are two very different people, but their lives intersected somehow recently. Emilie goes to North Broward Prep, which is a few miles away from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. And why don't you go ahead and tell us how February 14th was for you, being a student that's not too far from where the shooting happened?
So I was actually at home February 14th and my friends were going to come over after school. So my friend Becca got to my house, and right as she was about to come up, my friend Alex texted us. She was driving home to her house, which is a mile away from Marjory Stoneman Douglas. She said, "Hey guys, don't take Sawgrass, there's an accident." She saw a bunch of cops coming down Sawgrass, so she assumed there was a major accident. So we were like, okay, we'll take Loxahatchee or find another way there. So we were about to leave, and then my friend Alex texted us in the group chat that she heard there was a shooting. And our initial reaction was kind of like, is this real? Was it just a report? Was someone actually hurt? We really didn't know much at that point, but soon we got a text saying that there were people that died. And half of my friends, most of my best friends, go to that school. So immediately I kind of just broke down. My dad was there and I just started crying because it's just kind of a feeling of helplessness and you really can't do anything about it. You can't rush in there and save them. You don't know who's okay, and I have so many friends there, I didn't know who to text first, and I actually called my friend Delaney, and she didn't answer, so I texted her saying, "Are you okay? Please answer." I started texting my other friends, and their replies were mostly either they ran to the nearest Walmart and hopped a fence, or they're still in school and they're hiding in a closet and they don't know what's going on. So at that point, I just felt completely helpless. I felt terrible for my friends. I really couldn't do anything for them about it. All I could do was just hope that they'd be okay and hope that everybody I knew was okay. But unfortunately, 17 students passed away that day, and none of them were my close friends, but they were mutual friends, and a lot of my best friends knew them very well. And so that day was a complete nightmare, and we were all in shock, and it did not feel real. It still doesn't feel real. Like, I think about it and it doesn't seem like it actually happened, and I hear those names and I don't feel like those people are actually gone, and I go to the vigil and it doesn't seem like it's reality, and it's going to take a while to sink in. But that day was very, very hard and very emotional for a lot of people in this whole entire community, and something that no one should have ever have to experience again, and I want to make sure of that.
So Emilie's father's in the studio with us. When this happened, when you heard about this happening, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was partially disbelief. Like, you don't really think that something like this is going to happen near you. Emilie mentioned when we walked in the studio, I was in Fort Lauderdale Airport when that shooting went down. So when she told me, you just hope that what you're hearing are reports that might be inaccurate, and maybe it's not as bad as people think, and you just wait and you wait and you wait to get more and more updates. And unfortunately, every update we got was worse than the one before it. So that was very difficult on all the kids and parents, and I mean everybody that's even remotely tied to that.
So as Emilie mentioned, that feeling of helplessness, what other emotions did you feel running through you? Was there anger? Was there I'm just curious what exactly goes through you in that moment, because I try to place myself in both the students and the family's shoes, and it's just really hard to feel exactly what you're feeling.
I just, as a father, my instinct is to care for my child. So that's where my brain was, that's where my heart was. And you just try to block out the emotional component that is, so loud in the room, and try to keep calm for her, and try to, you can't make sense of it, but you don't, at the same time, you don't want to fly off the handle. Mm-hmm. So that was really it, just more protection.
So Emilie, I know before you had mentioned that a lot of your friends knew of the alleged shooter, a lot of people knew that he was disturbed. And you mentioned an interesting point. You said people reported it.
Right.
So I'm starting to notice, is it a breakdown in policy? Maybe our professor here can give us a little bit more detail about where that breakdown in policy happened from people reporting it and then nothing happening.
Well, first of all, I think that we have failed our children, and certainly the FBI should have been proactive. Once they got a tip, they had a duty to investigate that. And I'm sure they would say they get a lot of tips. The tip wasn't specific enough. But I think part of it is a narrative that when these events happen, it's because there's an emotionally disturbed youth or there's a lone wolf, and they don't see this as terrorism. Terrorism is something that happens with people who wear the scarves around their head in the Middle Eastern. When kids, homegrown American kids do these acts, well, it must be some mental aberration. And it is a mental aberration, but it begins that way. They're alienated kids. They look for a place to belong. And one of the tragedies is that on the internet, there are places for them to seek to belong. These are extremist groups. Cruz belong to a group called the Republic of Florida. That group is extremist, it's racist, and it can, even though it doesn't have a building, it doesn't have a house, it can recruit, indoctrinate, and train people just as well as the Nazis with the brown shirts. And so I think what's happening is that they are making a false dichotomy between terrorists on one hand side and lone wolf crazed child on the other, because they become each other. Cruz, I believe, my hypothesis, can't prove it but believe it, is he started as an alienated kid. He became radicalized, going on the internet looking for a place to belong, and he found the wrong place. And I think that the goal of we should have like an infrastructure that would identify these kids before they get there. That infrastructure could be something as simple as having a beefed up mental health infrastructure in the schools that could identify people who are going off the rails. He was doing Facebook posts with knives and guns. Anybody who wants to kill an animal, something's wrong with them. That's a sociopath. He was doing that. This was reported. There should have been people at the school whose job it was to talk to every student, counsel every student. And I think it's the passive, ridiculous, sit on our hands, head in the sand attitude that ignores. We need a systemic institutional structure with resources. Draw the money from counterterrorism if you can, that will address this. This kid could have been stopped. Right. He should have been stopped. He would have been stopped had we put the resources to it for the mental health. There's just so much we could do, and we should have saw this coming. The FBI should have a section just for domestic terrorism. And I think part of it is that the way we define terrorism is so out of date. A terrorist to them is somebody who has a building in the physical world. You can be a terrorist and operate on the internet. You have no building, but you're still. And so we need to change the definition of terror. What do we have to do to create a systemic way we're looking into these issues? And it starts with mental health, but it goes beyond that. We need to do. We are failing our kids, and somebody's head should roll.
And Professor, Emilie mentioned that this lone wolf, quote unquote, was reported several times. Yeah. So how tangible is it for cops and for the police department to truly investigate every single time they get a report?
This is something they know how to do. The question was, do they have the will? Do they have the motivation? It's what they take seriously. And everything you do,
but is it not also an issue of resources? Just
do they have enough?
Is it because I'm not sure the exact numbers of in that area, but I'm sure like the police officers, I've heard them speak on TV that they need more resources to go through that. And like you're saying, we can pull from other groups, but do you see that as a viable option?
We investigate illegal immigration, migratory bird parts. We investigate people who do things like gambling, marijuana. We arrest 1 million people a year on marijuana. All the resources you're putting in, we spend $1 trillion in the drug war. I mean, why are we arresting people with marijuana? I mean, what we should be doing is putting resources into things that cause people to be killed. We're investigating whether people import migratory bird parts. I mean, the FBI is the most sophisticated investigatory agency in the world. If the resources aren't there, then shift the resources. We investigate terrorism powerfully. but it's how you define terrorism. See, if this was conceived of as terrorism, no one would say we don't have the resources. The reason they're saying that, because they see this as something separate from. To them, a terrorist is a person who is Middle Eastern. But I'm telling you, this was terrorism.
Absolutely.
And it's some sort of Mr. Magoo-like mentality that they've got that they can't see it. I need to take their Mr. Magoo glasses off. This is homegrown terror.
And I think a lot of the problem is, I mean, people are overlooking the fact that this student was so dangerous that he was expelled from his public high school. He was expelled and kind of just, you know, had a very, it seems like, tumultuous family life. Just, he was so obviously someone that should have been flagged down. I think my sister is a public school teacher as well, and she says that teachers are the first people to actually notice a lot of this behavior, especially with absentee parenting, or just a lack of having that family life. So I kind of wonder, if he was expelled from school, how did they follow up with that? Where was that breakdown?
There's some people who have privilege. I think one factor of this is privilege. And so if he had been a poor Puerto Rican black kid in the inner city and he had the problems he had, the legal intervention, criminal justice intervention would have occurred a long time ago. But because of who he is, where he is, then you tend to think, well, kids come from good backgrounds, from affluent areas.
He's probably just a little troubled.
Right. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. He wouldn't have got that benefit if he had come from Liberty City, Overtown,
right?
And his complexion was a little different. Still remember there's a judge who said that when a kid did something wrong, which was a serious crime, it was just affluenza. And so we have these images of crime. So our image of a criminal doesn't fit this guy. Image of a terrorist doesn't fit this guy. You need to change that. See, what stereotypes do is they create false positives and false negatives. And he fit into this false negative. We think that, well, this guy he's not that kind of issue. I mean, regardless of how many times the police come, we think that's just a troubled child. Regardless of the fact that he shoots at cats, we think it's a troubled child. Regardless of the fact that he got expelled, we think it's a troubled child. And he puts stuff on the internet he says, I want to shoot up a school. And I mean, if he had been someone other than who he was, it would have been taken, I think,
more seriously beforehand.
So I think it's the window through which you look. You have a set of assumptions, and it has to do with privilege that we give and the benefit that we give to people from certain classes and certain backgrounds. We need to rethink that.
And so, Emilie, as Professor Jones was mentioning, that we need to put more resources towards counseling and different mental health in schools. I just want to understand, this high school you go to and other high schools in your area, what kind of mental health resources do you have, and do you know if people take advantage of those resources at all?
I know each of our schools, we have counselors, but not a lot of kids actually use those resources. I know that some of my friends are kind of uncomfortable going to counselors just because we're unfamiliar with who they are. So a lot of it gets bottled up and a lot of it stays outside of the school's recognition. They don't really know what's going on. But as far as Nicholas Cruz's case, I know that there has been so many events that have pointed to something that's happening. For example, him commenting on a YouTube video, I'm going to become a professional school shooter. Him outside shooting BB guns at chickens.
So was this common knowledge to like your friends and those of Stoneman Douglas
Before
High
the
School?
shooting.
Yes.
So was he an outcast and everyone kind of already knew of that reputation he had?
Yeah, he was actually banned from having a backpack at the school.
Why is that?
For this reason, I'm guessing they suspected he could do something like this. And a lot of my friends actually, when they heard what was happening, they said, it's him. It has to be him. They knew. So
when the event itself happened, was it a matter of you guys jumping to the conclusion that it was him, or when you heard it was a student, did you kind of narrow it down to like possible people who it could have been? I
mean, I think it was different for everyone. Some of my friends in the school, I know one guy actually took a video during it and said that the suspected shooter is Nick Cruz and that nobody was surprised. A lot of them literally said that that's exactly who they thought of when they heard this was happening. I didn't know of Nick Cruz personally. I've never met him. But definitely after seeing everything that he's done and all the reports that have been made, I wouldn't be surprised either.
So I think there was something missing there, and it would have been so easy to prevent this from happening if someone had actually taken it seriously. Someone had gone through with the report. If the FBI in Miami had actually done the investigation, this wouldn't have happened.
Now, one of the things that our president suggested was arming teachers. As a student, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that is a terrible idea.
You can say that 3 more times.
Yeah.
A very, very,
people
very
hear it.
bad idea. There's a few reasons that go behind it that I personally believe. I would be so much more uncomfortable going to school if I saw my teachers had guns, even if they're hidden or concealed.
Right.
Just knowing that they have the guns would make me more uncomfortable. I wouldn't feel confident that a teacher, not saying teachers are bad, obviously, they're great, but they're not trained to have firearms. They're not trained as cops.
Let alone in high stress situations,
Exactly.
you don't know how they might
There
react.
was a cop at my school the next day after the shooting. He got nervous and he accidentally shot himself in the leg. My entire school went on lockdown and the SWAT team came in and evacuated it. So I don't see how, if that happens, if there's other instances like that a teacher is going to hold their composure when a person comes in with an AR-15 and starts shooting people. I don't think it's realistic. I'm sure some people could handle it, but I don't think it's reason enough to give every single teacher a gun. And so there's also the fact of, if a shooter comes in, are they going to shoot the teacher first because they know they have guns? There's just so many things that go into this that make it seem like a very, very bad idea.
I'm just imagining my sister, who's about 5 feet tall and like 100 pounds. She teaches the 4th grade. Hi, Caroline, if you're listening. Just with a gun, I cannot picture it. And she's expressed to me several times that she hates it. She says she would refuse it.
So, Professor Jones, maybe you can walk us through the legality of if there was something around arming teachers, if that would even be allowed at a local level, a national level, and what kind of process would have to be involved with training the teachers, and what already exists with school resource officers. I hear it's a lot of public schools across the country have police officers that are stationed at schools, and they're referred to as resource officers. So can you explain to us what already kind of goes on with
And
that?
how much that would even cost if it were a tangible idea to do?
Yeah, well, let's start with the beginning. So historically, schools have been gun-free zones, and so the idea was you protect students by saying these are going to be zones where no one brings a gun unless you're some, school police. And now the idea of armed police would transform that policy irretrievably. And the idea proposed by the legislature was you wouldn't arm all teachers, you would arm teachers who have some other purpose, like coaches. Now, of course, what would have to come with that would be licensing, training, some sort of way you evaluate, check to see if they're up to speed. But the bottom line is you can't take Mr. McGillicuddy or Coach Flute Snoot and make him into a SWAT officer overnight. And I think that the danger would be much more likely. I know people own guns are much more likely to shoot themselves than to shoot the person who breaks into the house. And you have so many, and even if you put in lockbox, there's a danger that kids would break into a lockbox and shoot themselves. A terrorist would go for the lockbox first, or it goes for the teacher who has a gun first. It's the most harebrained, ridiculous idea I've ever heard. And it goes back to the idea that somehow you can respond to these situations after they happen. You can't do that. You respond to them by identifying the kids who have the problems early on and get them some help. That's your best response. If you got to wait till they get the gun in the school, you're already too late. They're going to kill somebody. And even if you kill a kid, I think that's a loss. I think you want to try to intervene as early as possible. Mental health services could happen there. Another thing that could happen too, which I think is obvious, and so obvious that the students have created a civil rights movement. Why not ban AR-15s? I think that's a much better. I'd love to see that. If you ban the AR-15s, ban certain handguns,
But what do you say to Second Amendment activists who say that would be against their natural rights as Americans?
Well, I think that the Second Amendment has a history that goes back to the idea that the people are the only guarantors of liberty. and that if the people don't have guns, it's easy for the state to oppress and enslave them. And I think that idea probably made sense in 1789.
Right.
If the government wanted to enslave us, a handgun isn't going to stop. It's ridiculous. And so it's a narrative that is an anachronism. It's out of place. I think that what sustains it is not logic, but money. The NRA has hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Last time Clinton had a ban 20 years ago on assault weapons, the NRA said, well, we'll fix you. We'll run candidates against you everywhere we can and destroy the power of the Democratic Party. They did. They succeeded. No one else dared to challenge the ARA since Clinton. So it's been 20 years. And they know what would happen to them. They would use their money, and it would be a problem. And so the NRA is like an 800-pound gorilla. And that's really what you're up against. The argument, there's no constitutional argument to protect an AR-15. The only purpose is to kill. So if you take away the AR-15, no one uses it for hunting. No one uses AR-15, I don't think, to protect their home. And so its sole purpose is to kill. And the NRA doesn't want to budge on that because they think if the camel's nose will be in the tent, if we let this happen, then next they'll be after our handguns. And it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's right-wing, it's conservative, but they have tremendous power to push them out. To get that position dislodged would take a movement on the scale of the civil rights movement that blacks had in the 1960s and 70s.
Now, why do you feel it's so hard for people to want to simply increase background checks or make sure that security measures are taken more seriously? Why do you think that's not a viable option that people want to do? Where is this fear of this entire ban of guns coming from? And why do people truly care about having guns in the first place?
Well, it's because people are afraid. They've been whipped up in the frenzy. There's a distrust of government. There's a distrust of not only big government, but of all government.
But where does that come from? Because me looking into my family, we never truly are afraid of the government, nor do we ever contemplate that the government might be after us. And maybe that's me coming from a place of privilege, but me trying to protect myself using a gun has never been an ideal that's run across my family. So do you think that's only valued in certain family demographics?
I think somehow you have a gun culture in this country.
And where do you think that's found?
I think that's found predominantly in rural America. You find it in rural America. You find it among Americans who tend not to be the college-educated Americans. You find it in Americans who have a tradition of working as farmers, hunters, and so forth. And so there are tens of millions of people who still are part of this culture. It's ingrained. But I think much of that changes for people. The more education you have, the less you would likely be tied to it.
And I think the big gun culture of America, and I don't really have too much actual facts in front of me to back this up, but just from what I've read throughout my learnings is that the big difference between America and our other peer countries across the world, between Canada, Australia, England, is that this country was founded on the idea of the frontier. When people came here, they were expanding. They were still going, and they created this the whole concept of the Wild West, and where laws and other things weren't quite established yet, even though the country was already established, and guns became the pseudo law and government in that time. And we no longer live in that time, but I think a lot of it is rural America's nostalgia for that time, and I think a lot of our peer countries, people always compare us, they have stricter gun regulations, that's why they don't have all this, gun violence. I think a lot of it is the base culture in the rural parts of the countries where, for a long time, guns are what defined the culture of rural America and expanding America and what gave America its prosperity.
I agree.
Emilie's father, I want to ask you, and if you're not comfortable with it, don't answer, but do you yourself have a gun?
No, I don't.
Do you feel like purchasing a gun could help you in any way possible? Have you ever considered buying a gun?
I don't. I've thought about it. and I like the right to be able to do it if I wanted to. But I don't. You know, I've never been in a situation, although I was almost at the airport, but where I could have used one. You know, and I just feel like it presents a lot more danger to me personally, to my family personally, just to have a loaded gun or a gun in the house. So I haven't, but I tend to agree that with Second Amendment, that I think that we need that amendment. I think it's there for good reason, and I think it has a lot to do, not so much. I think that the point that you make about the frontierism is valid, but I also think that the framers of the Constitution did have the idea that imperialistic governments will oppress their citizens,
Right.
and you have to have a way to fight back. I know you can't fight back a tank with a pistol,
Right.
but if the police have unfettered ability to walk into your home and do whatever they want,
Right.
a homeowner with a gun can fight back.
Now,
And I don't see that happening, all right? But again, there are a lot of scenarios that we don't see today that maybe somebody didn't see 100 years ago and may not see 100 years from now. But the Constitution, as it stands, has created the greatest benefit to humanity ever.
And-
So I'd be very careful about changing it.
yeah, I want to go back to you really quick, but Professor Jones, is it possible?
I don't
for-
want to repeal the Second Amendment. I
Right.
want to keep it there. I'm not trying to take it away. But the AR-15, I would like to take that away.
Because it's for mass destruction. It's not something that you can just carry around. But is it still possible for police to infiltrate your house today without permission?
Well, I think the court has been extremely strong in saying that the court generally needs a warrant before they
Right.
come into your house. The house is super protected. But they can come in without a warrant. It just depends on the circumstances. So, for example, if they're chasing a robbery suspect and they run to your house, it's called hot pursuit. But no, the house is well protected. I think that the way I think of it is that the most powerful defense is a tradition of liberty, a tradition of freedom. If the people believe and share beliefs in freedom, and they elect leaders who share those beliefs, that's your most powerful protection. Now, when you elect leaders who don't believe in those values, who believe in running roughshod, that's where you've got a problem. So I think it's the real power is not in the gun, it's in the ballot.
Right.
And I think that if you can vote and you can vote well, and if you can form coalitions with people who believe what you believe, then you can protect freedom. But I think what we tend to do is what many people tend to do is they stay home, and people get elected who have no business being elected. I won't mention any name. And so I think that, yes, I would like to have, the right to own a gun. I want the right to own a gun. I want to be able to protect myself, but I don't want the right to own an AR-15. And leaders who protect that, something's wrong there. The elevator isn't going all the way up, I think. There's no reason to have AR-15s, and the ease with which people can get guns, the ease with which people who are mentally ill can get guns. This guy was mentally ill. There's something terribly wrong with that, and even more wrong, we should have some means of identifying the people who have left the rails. Anyone who tries to kill a helpless animal, something is wrong.
And do you think raising the age to 21 makes any difference?
No difference. No
Okay.
difference. No difference.
Yeah, Emily and I were talking on the way down just about how there are a lot of measures, whether it's the raising the age or background checks that are more significant background checks, or there's a lot of measures that are on the table out there. And it does seem like there's no magic solution. You just can't say, let's put this legislation through and then we have a solution. But maybe you can tighten down on a bunch of areas that in the net of it tightens narrows the
overall
the loop that this person can get through, because it's too wide. We saw that the FBI was tipped off. They just dropped the ball. So that needs to be tightened up, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned you were at the Fort Lauderdale shooting. So
Yeah.
do you find any parallels between your situation and the situation that happened at
No,
Stoneman?
it was weird because we were just one terminal over and we had no idea what was happening.
Okay.
It was on a flickering TV that we could see, but you didn't know what it was. We thought, well, it must be somewhere else. We didn't realize it was in the next terminal until about 25 minutes later when the stormtroopers came running in and hustled everybody out. So it was
Right.
very, very strange.
So it's almost as
we
though
never
you
felt like we were going to be shot at.
Right. So you and your daughter have both encountered experiences involving guns, and I feel like that in itself is a telltale sign of our situation now, that it's so common for a father and a daughter to encounter a similar situation in such different settings. So in tightening security, what else do you think has to be done for there to truly be a significant impact? Professor Jones.
Well, I think that the main thing is that we need to change our way of thinking, our mindset. We need to realize that terrorists come in all shapes and sizes. They come in all colors. They come from poor backgrounds. They come from backgrounds like I grew up in Parkland. And they may come in the form of people who are 17-year-old kids who've been radicalized on the internet. And so we need to expand our concept. We need a new concept, a broader concept of who can be a terrorist. We need to change this idea that, kids from affluent areas are always just alienated kids. Some of them are terrorists. You need to call a spade what it is. Call it what it is. See it for what it is. That's the first thing that needs to change. Another thing that needs to change is that we need to stop thinking that you can deal with a terrorist after they run into the building with an AR-15. If you're only dealing with them after that, Mr. McGillicuddy or Miss McGillicuddy is probably going to fall over and shoot herself more likely than she's going to be able to shoot the terrorist. In fact, what's interesting is that when they do test studies about soldiers, only 1 in 4 are actually able to run into combat. 3 out of 4 of them are afraid to shoot. So Mr. McGillicuddy might fall in that. So the main thing is, why not try to identify the kids who have these problems before they get out of hand? That means beefed up resources, mental health. Maybe it means you have people come in undercover to infiltrate extremist groups like the Republic of Florida and find out what they're up to. So we need to begin to think about solving this problem the same way we would think about how we stop terrorists. We should take it with the same seriousness, put the same resources behind identifying the problem before it strikes. You're not going to be able to solve it simply by arming teachers or raising the age in which you can buy a long gun to 21. That's not going to work, and it's not going to help.
Right.
And we'll continue to fail our students.
So Emilie, it's obviously been a few weeks now since this event happened, and I know a lot of people your age have been the activists behind kind of the movement to reform the government. We had Donna Shalala here on our last episode, and she said that this is similar to the civil rights movement, where it's really run through the kids.
It's the youth.
It's the youth, exactly. So what are some steps you're seeing your friends taking?
Well, my friends and I actually got on a bus and went to Tallahassee. We spoke to legislators at the Capitol. So that was one of the first things I did. And I found out about it the night before, and I had like 10 minutes to pack. And then I got up at 8 o'clock and went on a bus. And I didn't know exactly what we were doing, but I knew that I had to do it. So we got there and we spoke to legislators. We went to a vigil and a rally. I know that a lot of my friends are on TV shows, on the news. They're writing letters to Marco Rubio. I wrote one myself at school, and it's actually being sent in a day or so. So really just keeping the activism alive kind of in person, but also online is a major part of this. My friends and I on Twitter are very active and very outspoken about the situation, and there are a lot of people who have paid attention, who are retweeting it, who are commenting. I used to just have most of my followers were under 18, and now most of my followers are adults. So it's nice to know that people are listening and people are engaging in our movement, and they're seeing us, and we're going to keep doing it. We're not going to say, oh, well, they adjusted this, so we're good. We don't have to do anything. Like, we're not going to stop until we can be almost sure that this won't happen again, even if that takes, like, our entire lifetime. It's something that we've experienced now, and we're not going to forget it. And there's always going to be that motivation behind us to do something about it, whether it's talking to legislators, writing letters, moving into politics, becoming part of Congress. I mean, we're young, we can do anything. We don't have jobs yet. So I'm actually also going to DC for the march, and I'm speaking to legislators there as well. So that's something else that we're all doing, and we're organizing things like the march, and I'm actually organizing a benefit concert. I can't say anything about it, but that's happening as well.
And where can people get more information about?
You can go to my Twitter. It's Evil Emilie, EVILEMILIE. So.
And what are some of the things that you asked Marco Rubio in your letter?
I went back and I found kind of the definition of the Second Amendment and the NRA's purpose, how they were formed. So part of that was that it was kind of there was a scientific aspect. And in my letter, I said, if this is a scientific aspect, are we experiments? And what conclusion do you need to come to before you realize that these guns are killing us?
I can't wait for him to open that
So
up.
I went off in that letter.
Yeah,
I did.
good. Well deserved. Did you go to the town hall by any chance?
No, I was actually on a bus back from Tallahassee, but I watched it on my phone.
And what'd you think about what he had to say? He was pretty hesitant on admitting that there was an issue and that the issue wasn't the guns.
Yeah, so was Dana. So
right.
My
any thoughts on that?
I didn't get to see a lot of it because the connection was bad, but from what I saw, I mean, there was a ton of people there. Obviously,
a lot of support.
Yeah, there's so many people supporting my friends who were actually on the stage, a few of them, and a lot of them were in the audience. And I just kind of watched like the dynamic between someone in a position of power and then my friends who were in high school.
Right.
And it was incredible to see that they had almost just as much influence as he did, if not more. So that was amazing.
And when you say your friends, so do you know David Hoggs, Emma Gonzalez, like?
I'm friends with Emma and I'm friends with Delaney Tarr, and then I have probably 15 other friends that go to that school. My friend Lex was in the audience and she yelled something. She said, "Do something about it." But
yes.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? How do you see your friends? What do you guys talk about? What are the conversations like now? Do you guys ever not talk about
And today was actually the first day back at school at Stoneman Douglas. So do you have any idea what that was like at that high school?
It was the first full day back. I know that they went back before, but they only had half days. So the first kind of half days were mostly just comfort. They had like
service
therapy dogs.
and-
They had today they actually had somebody famous came. I'm not sure of his name, but everyone's freaking out. But today was their first full day back, and they were expected to do schoolwork. And my friend Lex was texting me saying, I can't focus, and my teachers expect me to do schoolwork. So there's definitely still a struggle with where their minds are at, because obviously in that environment, after going through something like that, you can't really go back in that building and just feel completely comfortable and focus on algebra. So there was a celebrity there, and that made them happy. I mean, they have to incorporate some kind of uplifting part of
update.
this.
It was actually Dwayne Wade.
Yeah,
Dwayne Wade visited the school.
That's who it was, yeah. And then Betsy, what's her last name? Betsy DeVos. She was there, and the thing with her, my friends were saying, is she only chose a few select students to talk with. And in that school, there's about 3,000 kids. So a lot of my friends were complaining about that. And then my friend who actually did get to speak to her said she did not answer her question at all. She dodged it. She dodged all the questions. She was the only one talking, and then she left. So that was kind of my experience with some of the legislators in Tallahassee as well. And it's discouraging, but I mean, it's nothing we can't handle at this point.
Right.
That sounds like Betsy DeVos to me.
Yeah, what a lovely lady.
And
Betsy, if you're listening, we love you.
Something that I really like about this movement is that it's like you mentioned, it's a big collaboration between, not going to say collaboration, but a conversation between, big media, big politicians, and high school students. And actually, you mentioned the CNN town hall. I was actually there helping with CNN running the event. Working as a production assistant at the event. I got to meet with a lot of the CNN producers, and they, just like watching how they last minute put together this big town hall to like get the voices of the students and youth out there was really something I really enjoyed watching and seeing. And it just, I like you mentioned, like being part of this student youth movement has got to be really empowering. Can you talk about just a little where you want this movement to keep going? Like, you're a senior in high school. Like, do you see yourself, like, are you going to college next year? Are you going to just like be an activist, work like a full-time activist? Or are you going to like be an activist while also being a student continuing on?
And you're verified on Twitter, so what are you going to use with this newfound platform?
That was kind of crazy. I didn't expect that, but it's really cool. But so as I keep going into college, I'm definitely going to continue to be an activist. Before this happened, I really wasn't thinking about politics a lot. I was thinking about gun control just because of the experiences that my dad and I have had. So that was a factor already. But after this happened, I've seen like how much your voice, like how far you can go if you like put a point out there and you know what you're talking about. So I think being an activist is definitely going to be a huge part of my life in college and out of college for the rest of my life until, I mean, my whole life actually, because there's always something you can improve on. But so
what's the next step? What is the next thing you're looking forward to do in terms of activism? What is on your list?
I think that what I want to do next is really involve the kids who are in bad communities who deal with gun violence on a daily basis. And we are so fortunate to have this platform that we've been given, but there are also kids who deal with this every day, and they've been saying this for so long, and they haven't really been given the same opportunities that we have. So I recognize that 100%. And I think part of my activism is going to be getting those kids' voices heard, because if I'm given this platform, I can hand it off to them. And so that's what I want to do, and I want to get every kid involved because this has spread across the country. There's people laying out in Washington, D.C. They did a layout. They just laid there. It's just a form of protest. There's people having marches in every single city. My friends all around the country, because I have friends, because I moved a lot, they're texting me about these marches. They're organizing these rallies at their school. So I think getting all of these kids involved and then making sure that the kids who have been less fortunate definitely have a voice and the same kind of voice that we have. So that's kind of next for me.
And the March on DC, the 24th, correct? Do you want to give people a little more information on that just in case anyone wants to attend?
I am not working directly on it, but my friends are. So all I know is that it's March 24th. They're going to have a lot of amazing events. I don't know if I can share it. But there's going to be a musical aspect as well.
Perfect.
It's going to be really, really cool.
And I know Lyft actually tweeted the other day that they were going to be giving free rides on March 24th to whoever wanted to go
so if you want to go to the march and you live in the area, Lyft will give you a free ride to the march. You don't have to pay for anything. So
always team Lyft here. So we actually only have a few minutes left. So Emilie's father, one more question for you. How do you feel about your daughter being so involved with this activism and having this newfound platform? Are you scared for her? Are you getting a little more daddy-ish on her, more protective?
No, it's funny because just the opposite. I'm not scared at all. That never crossed my mind. But I'm excited about it because I think that as a father, you want to see your child move forward and do something with their lives. And and there's a path that you can finish high school, you can go to college, and you can do ordinary things, and you can be great at doing ordinary things, and that can be a wonderful life. Okay, but I see her already taking this mantle and doing it genuinely. She's not looking for fame. She's not looking for followers. She's not looking for something out of it. She's doing it because she wants to do it, and I think that's why it's working.
Perfect.
Other people see that.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Professor Jones, Emilie, Mr. Smith, thank you guys so much. My name is Paul Schultz.
I'm Meredith Sloan.
And I'm Tej Joshi.
And this is Talking Taboo. Remember, March 24th will be the March on DC. If you live in the area, Lyft will be giving you rides. If you have any questions, you can text us at 786-309-8861. That's 786-309-8861. Thank you so much.